Hello traders, welcome to the Nexoel Trading Hub YouTube channel. We are going to be looking at the weekly Forex forecast for the coming week. If you're new to the channel and wish to be staying updated with our weekly Forex forecast, you can do well to subscribe to the YouTube channel and also join the free Telegram community where you can have access to daily charts updates. So what we can see here from the chart, we have the dollar index, and this is actually the weekly time frame. If you can remember, last week I told us to expect to see price sweep this sell side liquidity. So we anticipated to see the sweep of the sell side liquidity because we observed the impulse, the momentum in which the bearish movement was coming to the downside. So we saw price being attracted to this fair value gap and also the sell side liquidity that now price actually return to the downside to actually sweep. So what we can see is we're still seeing more bearish momentum to the downside. You can see how last week closed to the downside with a very high volume. And then now we can see prices being attracted to this sell side liquidity. So any form of a bullish move as you may want to actually take in the USD index, you would have to really be careful because the United States dollar index is not really actually bullish. It is actually very bearish because you can observe last week closed with a very high bearish volume to the downside, and then we have a sweep of the sell side liquidity. So we could see price drop actually to sweep the sell side liquidity, and then where we could anticipate a likely bullish ride of price, or where we could anticipate a likely change in the buyers in the dollar index is actually when price return to this order flow. So for the coming week, we should expect to see price possibly gives a pullback to the upside to the 25% of this candle's volume, candle's body, and then price drop further to the downside. But then let's actually check the daily time frame. So here we are in the daily time frame. So you can see we have the sweep of the sell side liquidity. So now what we can see here is that price created this order block. So first, in the weekly time frame, what you would observe is actually we have this fair value gap was filled up and then price pushed to the downside. So now this fair value gap is now an inverse fair value gap. But I'm not really expecting price to actually really pull back to this level. So my anticipation is to see that price may pull back into the 25% of this candle body or the 50% of this rejection block week here. And then we have the continuation of price to the downside. So let's go back to the daily time frame. So here in the daily time frame, what you can see we have is actually price created this order block. This is the up close candle before the downward movement of price to the downside that swept the sell side liquidity. So price may not really return into the inverse fair value gap. We may see price face mitigation at this order block, and then price will continue the movement to the downside to sweep this sell side liquidity, and then we could start actually looking out for bullish long-term buyers from this particular zone. So the DXY is very much bearish. So any form of bullish directional bias you may try to establish, you just have to be really careful with that. So let's actually check the 4-hour time frame. So here in the 4-hour time frame, if price doesn't react at this fair value gap, where price will mitigate this down close candle before this upward movement, then price could possibly push to the upside to raid this liquidity before we have the fall of price to the downside. So this is what I just have to show you guys in the dollar index. So you would actually want to be looking at what price is actually giving you in the lower time frame when you see the return of price to this order block, which is also in confluence to the daily time frame order block, because you can see this is the 4-hour order block, and then you have the fair value gap. This entire movement of price to the upside forms the daily order block. So what you're going to see now is either we see the mitigation of this fair value gap and then price continue drop into the downside, or price may sweep this liquidity and then fall to the downside. So this is what you should know, and this is actually the forecast I want you guys to see from my own perspective for the dollar index. So guys, let's check out the EURUSD pair. So this is actually the weekly time frame in the EURUSD pair. So, last week I actually told us to anticipate the sweep of this buy side liquidity. So you can see price gave the bullish ride of price to the upside, and then price took out this buy side liquidity. You can see this is our range from this external high to this external low point. So this is actually the internal buy side liquidity, and then we can see the run of that internal buy side liquidity. So what we are actually anticipating now, further to see that price will raid this buy side liquidity. But before we have the continuation of the bullish move to the upside, we could see the possibility of price dropping into the 50% of this rejection block, and then we could now frame a bullish bias to the upside to anticipate the sweep of this buy side liquidity. So let's actually drop down to the daily time frame so that we can look at other sponsorship candles to consider our entry zones. So what you can see here in the daily time frame is the rate of this internal buy side liquidity. So we have the run of this buy side liquidity. So we're anticipating to see price rate this buy side liquidity, because you can see price came to the downside, but price did not rate this sell side liquidity. So we have price now pushing to the upside. So now you can see this is actually that rejection block zone from the weekly time frame. And then you can see here in the daily time frame, we have this other block here in confluence with that week that we actually marked out in the weekly time frame. So we could see price actually drop to the 50% based on what I actually said, looking at the weekly time frame. But what you can see in the daily time frame is that after price raided the internal buy side liquidity, you would see that price created this other block. We have this down close candle before the bullish move to the upside. So price may not necessarily return to the 50% of this particular zone. We could see price just return and mitigate this other block, and then we see price for the push to the upside to rate the buy side liquidity. So you just have to actually look at price with a very careful observation of its delivery when the markets open, because price may actually just read this low point and then give the bullish move to the upside. So let's check the 4-hour time frame. So here in the 4-hour time frame, what we're going to observe is this. So you can see the zone where we are anticipating to see the return of price to. So now what you can see is we have the push of price to the upside. We had this pullback, price push to the upside. Now we have this return that took out this sell side liquidity, and now we are having this bullish move to the upside. So we could see when price opened, since we are seeing that now price took out this buy side liquidity, so we could see the return whereby price will fill up this inefficiency you're seeing in the 4-hour time frame. So price may return to this fair value gap, and then we have the push of price to the upside, because we can see here that price took out this sell side liquidity. So except otherwise, where the market will actually consider this price movement as price gave this up movement, price gave us this, and then price gave us this. So price may just come again to just sweep this low, regard this low as an inducement, and then price will push further to the upside. So this is the two scenarios that may happen in the EURUSD. So we could see price just return through the fair value gap, and then we have the push of price to the upside, or we could see price may return further to the downside to raid this sell side liquidity. But then we already have that this bearish move took out this sell side liquidity. So, but because we possibly want to see the mitigation of the 50% of this rejection block zone that was violated to the upside, so we could see price sweep the sell side liquidity and then push to the upside. But in all case being the same, we could just anticipate to take our entry within this fair value gap. So this is all I want to show us, guys, in the Euro USD. So let's check out the GBP USD. So guys, this is the GBP USD pair, and this is a weekly time frame. If you can remember vividly, last week I told us to anticipate the sweep of this buy side liquidity. We want to see a buy side liquidity run, and in extension see buy side liquidity run here. And now we can see price gave us the bullish move last week to the upside, and then price raided this buy side liquidity. So we can see price is facing rejection at this order flow. We can see this is the last bearish candle. We have the down close candle before the bullish move to the upside. So now we can see price is mitigating this order flow. So we're anticipating to see that price returns to the downside below the buy side liquidity run level. Want to see price return before we could frame for the bullish move to the upside into this fair value gap we're seeing resting here. So what we can see, since we have price raided this high point, took out this buy side liquidity, and now we have this order flow. So price may dip lower to the 50% of this particular order block that was violated to the upside, and then we see price push to the upside. But you must know that price may not necessarily actually return to the 50% due to the volume we're seeing to the upside. So let's drop to the daily time frame to actually look at what price delivered and how we can actually frame anticipation for the coming week. So you can see this is the daily time frame, and you can see this is the zone we marked out from the weekly time frame. So you can see our price dropped to the downside, return to the 50%, drop to the downside. Price came to the 50% here and dropped to the downside. So the 50% level may offer a form of support, and then we see price push further to the upside. So let's check the 4-hour time frame. So here in the 4-hour time frame, what we are going to see is that we have price push to the upside, raided this buy side liquidity. You can see that anticipating to see that price return to the 50% may be impossible when you look at the lower time frame. So now what we can actually observe is to see price action when price return into this fair value gap. Then we can begin to frame the bullish move to the upside. But then just the way we also still observe in the Euro USD, we could see in the GBP USD, since we have this push of price to the upside, price gave us this pullback, price push to the upside. So we could see return to the downside where price regard this as inducement. So we could see return to the downside before we see price push to the upside. So this is what we are likely to see in the GBP USD. It's either we see price return to the downside, face rejection at this order block. Since we have this order block was created, but then price violated it, created this order block within this order block, and then pushed to the upside. So price may return to the downside to mitigate the fair value gap and continue the upward movements. But then in confluence to the higher time frame, the expectation to see that the order block that was violated reclaim price. So we could see price dip more lower to rate this as an inducement, and then we could see price face mitigation here and then push to the upside, because we can regard this as an unmitigated order flow zone. This particular level can be regarded as an unmitigated order flow zone. So we could see price react here and then push to the upside. So if you're anticipating to see the return of price to this level, then our stop loss should be below this low, should in case price wicks a little lower to rate this low point and push to the upside. So this is what we are also anticipating in the GBP USD pair. So guys, let's check the gold pair. So guys, this is actually gold, and this is the weekly time frame. So last week we saw the raid of this buy side liquidity. So we have this buy side liquidity run. So I told us to anticipate the pullback of price to the downside before we anticipate price for the pushing to the upside. And you can see that happened last week. So let's drop to the daily time frame. So here in the daily time frame, you can see that we anticipated to see the return of price to dip lower below this buy side liquidity run to mitigate this order flow, and then we see the bullish move of price to the upside. There's actually a review video for the gold pair, so you can check that out to actually understand more on the review that was carried out for the gold pair. So now we can see price return into the order flow, and then we see price push to the upside. So we are still expecting to see more bullish move to the upside, where price would possibly raid this buy side liquidity. So let's go to the 4-hour time frame. So here in the 4-hour time frame, if you can vividly remember, I told us about this order block and the fair value gap. We're expecting to see the return, mitigation of these, and then price push to the upside. So if you actually caught this trade on Thursday from this point, then kudos to you guys. So what we are still going to be expecting is to see price keep pushing to the upside. But then we have to see what price is going to reveal at this order block zone, this particular supply, before we can determine if price is still going to push further and raid this swing high points and continue the bullish move to the upside. So this is what we have to actually expect in gold. So we should still anticipate more bullish push of price to the upside. So we could see that price would open and then fall to actually fill up this fair value gap. And then we see price continue to the upside, or price may dip to this inversion fair value gap to mitigate it and then push to the upside. So this is what I have to show you guys in the gold pair, and this is all I have to show you guys for the weekly forecast for the coming week. This is just actually a very quick one. So cheers guys, and God bless you all.